What the fact?
Comic Sans MS, the one font that is hated all over the internet, was based on the lettering used in the Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen graphic novels. Superman has had some really ridiculous powers over the years. You had the strange but not extreme like super weaving that allowed him to make dresses really fast. The mind control just by concentrating really hard, and he would know who was calling on a rotary telephone. He could also summon a tiny version of himself from his hand. Tim Burton listened to Prince's music constantly while shooting Batman, and said the musician's songs had a major influence on the creation of the film's version of the Joker. Prince eventually wrote songs for the film, but Burton reportedly hated them and only used them because he was obligated. The Green Lantern and Wonder Woman were supposed to become a love couple, but that was scratched in the 70s when DC received a letter by a fan that suggested the same idea. Due to legal reasons, this prohibited DC Comics from moving forward with the idea. When it first appeared in 1939, DC was known as Detective Comics, and that name still holds up to this day. This would be shortened to DC Comics. But DC Comics was devised to clarify you weren't talking about the District of Columbia. That made things awkward, however, as that extended the acronym to the tongue twister of Detective Comics Comics. Writers of the Batman comics series feared that Bruce Wayne would look incompetent if he didn't kill the murderous Joker in a fight, so the villain was rewritten in the 1950s as a cartoonish prankster and forbidden to kill. By 1969, he had stopped appearing in the comics altogether. It wasn't until 1973 that the character was allowed to return and kill again. Wonder Woman was originally named Suprema. The Flash gave his superpowers to himself. During the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover comic, he ran so fast that he turned into pure energy, traveled back in time, and hit himself with the very bolt of lightning that gave him his superpowers in the first place. DC Comics once created a hero named Dog Welder, whose strategy was to weld dead dogs to people's faces.
ChrisTopProgram.com, home to No Name the Dark Web Serial Killer, Rideshare Stories, and What the Fact.
What the fact?
The original version of the Man of Steel couldn't fly. Yep, that was a shocker. Instead, he could only leap over tall buildings in a single bound. It wasn't until the 1940s when the animators of the Superman cartoon requested for him to have flying abilities. Zack Snyder briefly considered hiring former Batman actor Christian Bale to play a completely new role in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, in order to emphasize its distinction from the Dark Knight trilogy. Contrary to what many think, the first movie about Batman was not the 1966 film starring Adam West, Batman the Movie. In fact, 2 years prior to that classic cheese fest release, Andy Warhol featured the Caped Crusader in a black and white film, Batman Dracula. Like Batman, the movie Batman Dracula was a goofy homage to the comic book hero, but it was quite a bit stranger. Blah, I want to bite your neck, Robin. Earth 23 is a planet in the DC universe that is almost solely inhabited by black versions of DC characters. Black Superman was based on Barack Obama, whereas Wonder Woman was based on Beyonce Knowles. As iconic as Superman is today, it's hard to believe. One of the early draft ideas for Superman, however, was of a short, bald, mad scientist type who called himself the Superman. Maybe this is why Lex Luthor is so bitter. Henry Cavill refused to shave his chest in order to portray the character in Man of Steel, citing the character's hairy chest in Death of Superman comic storyline as his reason against it. My question to the comic book geeks of the world, feel free to leave your answer in the comments. If Superman was going to shave his chest or his face, how would he do it? Superman's most known and most exploited weakness, kryptonite, was also not originally in his story. It was actually a hastily written-up plot device for the 1943 Superman radio show that could explain the disappearance of Superman for a week. Bud Collyer, who voiced Superman for the show, went on a one-week vacation, so the writers had to come up with an excuse for why the indestructible hero was missing in action. In the 80s, DC's New Guardians comic featured a villain named the Hemo-Goblin, A white supremacist vampire who drank AIDS-infested blood and bit black people.
What the Fact is a Chris Top program production.
What the Fact?
Hi, I'm Erica, 1/3 of Making Sense. Make sure you auto-download on Spreaker, and thanks for listening to this Chris Top production.
The Chris Top program, listened to by at least 3 people worldwide.